We're going on a trip in our favorite rocket ship, zooming through the sky.
What's up, guys? My name's Daniel. Feel free to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button. It's completely free, it costs you nothing. If you feel like donating, there's a way to do that down in the description. I love to have my back scratched. I like giving free information, but it also feels good to have a little bit returned to me as well. So, I also have a Facebook page if you guys want to check that out, or you have questions, or you just want to join, post your bike, whatever, talk about things. That link is also in the description. I have my PayPal link in there if you want to send a donation to buy me a cup of coffee, whatever. It also helps support the channel. So without further ado, let's get started. Hopefully I get to help you guys out today. Let's get going. Welcome back to day number 3. I'll tell you what, I forgot how hard it is to get the carbs out of this thing. This was a very poor design by Ninja, or by Kawasaki, to be honest with you. Every time I grab one of these 250s and then it needs carb work, I always forget that it is like a massive undertaking removing the carbs. It is just huge. You have to tear almost the entire bike apart to get the carbs out. That includes loosening a lot of the rear end so that you can shift and maneuver the air box around. I need to stop buying these 250s. They're great bikes when they work good, but man, getting the carbs out of these things, I forgot how ridiculous of a job that really is. Anyways, they're out. After disassembling and like 60% of the bike, I've got them out. They're on the bench now. They actually don't look that bad. I mean, I can tell they were eBay purchased, but I can also tell they weren't cleaned. It's like somebody just ordered eBay carbs and just chucked them on there. That's what it looks like happened. They just assumed that they were going to be good carbs and threw them on without cleaning them or removing the bottom, because I can tell that these bolts have not been tampered with. So I can tell that the screws have not been tampered with in what appears to be, yes, not one of these has a tamper mark in the lifetime of these carbs. So somebody just ordered a set of carbs and just threw them at the bike and then expected it to run and pieced it all back together, and then it didn't run and they were like, fuck this, I'm done. That was too much work putting all that back together. So hence I got the bike for $400. I'm willing to do the work because I find this stuff fun and engaging. I just forgot how much work these little ninjas are to get the carbs out. The 500's almost just as bad. The 500's crazy. Anyways, let me tear the bottom of these carbs off. We'll have a look at what's going on. I know that they're installed in the bike this way, right? Like this. This carb right here is the one that I believe is leaking. It's not this one, it's this one. However, we already have the carbs off, so you already know what we're going to do. We're going to clean them all the way through because it seems stupid not to do it while you have them out, which is what should have been done in the first place so that you didn't have sticking floats. For all we know, the needles are bad in these things. We don't know, but we do need to take them apart, clean them properly, and then slap them back together. Even if it's just a fresher clean, a refresher, quick little blasty blast, clean the lines, do all that little good stuff. That's what needs to happen. So let's pull them apart. So overall, this is the one that's been leaking. Overall, they look okay. They're not horrible, and they haven't been dived in on yet. They have not been torn apart ever. I can tell because everything is still in perfect shape. There's no markings on any of this stuff. None of the bolts or screws have any markings on them. They have not been attempted to be taken off before. But what I am going to do is, you're going to need a tool like this if you plan on doing this. This is a float height measurement tool. And what we're going to be doing, obviously, is measuring the float heights to make sure that they are still accurate. So I need to go online and figure out what the float measurement height is supposed to be for these so that we can check them. And then what I am going to do, so first I'm going to clean them. Because as you can see, there's just some grime and debris. It's not as much ethanol damage as I thought there was going to be. I thought these were going to be pretty trashed. But the inside of these are actually in fairly good shape. What we're having here is either a bad needle seat that is leaking past or allowing it to leak past fuel and continue filling the bowl, or we have a stuck float, which does not appear to be the case because both of these are moving fairly easily. Now, I'm going to take all this apart and clean it, obviously, and I'm going to clean the jets because I'm already in here, so it seems stupid not to do these things and clean out all the passages and all that stuff. That's definitely something we're going to be doing, blasting all these little holes with carb cleaner and giving these a very thorough run through. But it would be dumb of me not to check the float height value before I slap all this back together. So let me go check the manual and see what the stock float height OEM settings are supposed to be for these and see if they're even in spec. If not, I will do my best to show you guys how to adjust these properly. But they look like they both are holding the same sync. So I think they're both well synchronized. I shouldn't have to tamper with that. But we are going to check the float height. So let me tear these jets out. The pilot's down here. The main's right here. Both sides. So we're going to pull these two mains and these two pilots, and we're going to have a look at those, and then we're going to remove the floats, and we're going to take a look at the needles and see what the needle heads look like. A lot of times they deteriorate over time. And being that these are the original carbs, these are over 10 years old at this point, I'd be curious to see what the needles look like. So let's pull this apart and we'll inspect it. Okay, so the spec is between 15 and 18 millimeter on here. This is a pretty neat tool. I'm going to show you how to use it. You slide this back and forth to fit the diameter of the float, and then it rests like this. If you guys can see that, it rests like that on the case so that you know the highest and lowest point on it. And then the L right here slides up and down to your preset, which is how you evaluate whether these are correct or not. This is going to show the height value of in between. So if it's between 15 and 18, you want to do about 16.5, 17 millimeter, right? So if I set this up here, which I'm going to do on cam, I'm going to show you. So there you go, to see if they are within spec. And if you look down there, you can see there's a good gap, but if you look at it, it's actually set at around 16 at the highest point of the carb. So they are right on the line of being spec, and they're both about identical. Now I could adjust this, but I'm not sure it's necessary, but there you go. As you can see, same thing on this side. Just above 15. It is riding at about 16 millimeters. So both of these are at 16 mil, right? Which is within spec. So this fuel that we're getting passed, I'm going to go ahead and assume was a sticking float. So we're going to clean all this, but I could also be wrong about that. And the way that you set these up correctly is you make sure that all the tension is basically taken off these except for the weight of the float, and you lightly set it down until it makes contact like that, and that is it. Because if you push this down, it activates the spring, right? And we're not trying to do that. We want it to just be resting on there. That is how you check the correct float height, right? So these tools are pretty cheap. Pick one up online. I've had mine for quite some time because I do a lot of carburetor work, and that's basically what you do. So you can slide this bar back and forth to go in between the carbs, and then you set it right on the rack, and you can see based on your preset value what you're supposed to have these set at, and they are within tolerance. They're both actually almost identical, which is good. However, we're gonna have to pull these, then double check them again, because I need to look at the needles underneath them. So we need to check out the float needles and see if they've degraded, because we're getting extra fuel in one and not the other, and that doesn't make sense to me unless a float is sticking or there's a needle leaking. So let's pull them apart. Just to be clear, I'm slapping it back together now. I have already cleaned all the jets and everything and gone through it. And I think we're in good shape. I'm going to actually feed the carb some fuel before we reinstall it with my temporary tank, which has a cutoff on it. So we're going to connect that to these carbs on the temporary tank. That way I can see if these are going to overflow before I reinstall them, because clearly that needs to happen. So there's no point in putting these back in the bike if I'm just going to find out real fast that they're going to overflow. So what I'm going to do is hook up my emergency tank right here. I'm going to add some fuel. I'm going to hook it up to the lines. So I normally hang right up here like so. I put gas in it. I'm going to hold on to the carbs for a minute. We'll add some gas to it, and then I'll turn it on right here, which it's currently on. We're going to go ahead and turn that off. There we go. And I'll go ahead and put some fuel in there. Then we'll hook it up to the carbs here, to this line. We'll feed these carbs some fuel and see if this thing is going to overflow. Because like I said, pointless to reinstall them until we're positive there's no gas leaks. After that, we should be able to crank it up, start it, see how it runs. Everything's been cleaned on the interior of the carbs. So, there's only one thing left to do. Test it. Okay. This is why I have multiple bungee cords hanging off the ceiling. We're going to set them right here. As you can see, I have fuel line connected. It's going to be gravity feed. It will not stop feeding the carbs. So ideally what we're looking for is the floats to fill up and stop gas flow from coming out. If this continues to just feed gas and it starts coming out somewhere, this is an easy way. Instead of reinstalling that entire system back in the bike and testing it, we're going to do it right here on the bench because that's the smartest way to do. We're also going to do it with the fuel cut off so I can just turn the fuel off if we start having a problem. So let's activate the fuel. You'll start seeing it pour into the container there. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's starting to flow. Lots of fuel going in now. So now we're looking to see if that's going to start spewing or not. If it does, then we'll go ahead and turn the fuel off. So right now it's filling these floats. Should be running straight across both of these. I'm going to lean this back a little bit so it's more centered. And now we're just looking for fuel coming out. The floats should stop the gas flow. Look it. I don't see any more fuel. So clearly the floats have stopped. I don't see anything leaking onto the ground. The floats have clearly done their job. There's no more fuel leak by. I don't see it coming out anywhere. It's got a complete flow. So that would tell me that me cleaning the jets and everything and cleaning the floats off obviously did exactly what it was supposed to, because what's going on here? We don't have any fuel leaking out like we did prior to this. Now, I did notice the fuel leak when it was leaning on its side, and technically these carbs are backwards right now. So what I am going to do is turn this around, and this is how it would be installed in the bike, going this way. And so because we had a fuel leak, the bike was technically leaning like this with these carbs forward. So I'm going to lean these carbs forward and keep it lean there for a sec and see if we get fuel overflow. Because that's how it would be sitting in the bike, like this. So all the times that we ran it, it would have been sitting like this. I don't see any fuel coming out. Do you guys? There's nothing on my hands. I don't see anything spewing out of the carbs. So clearly, I think we have solved that problem. That is a major plus. No fuel coming by. So that means the floats are doing their job now. They're not sticking anymore. The floats are actually doing their job. They have stopped fuel flow from continuing. Okay? That is exactly what they are supposed to do. That means I'm not scared to reinstall this into the bike now because I tested my work before putting it back together. So now I can turn this off. I can drain that fuel back into that gas tank. Okay, or this one, regardless, whichever one you want to do it. But that is a quick way to test your work to make sure you did a good job. Just hook them up and let them sit for a sec. Right? They're continuing to get fuel. So if it was going to leak leaning on its side or any of the above, it would do that. As you can see, no fuel coming out of these carbs. So we've clearly done exactly what we were supposed to do. The carbs are now doing their job. I'm going to empty those floats. I'm going to turn this off, and we're going to go ahead and reinstall this back into the bike, and then we'll start it up tomorrow and see what happens.